Hello, my name is Beth Davis, and I am a graduate student in the Masters of Teaching program at the University of Maryland University College. The following is a presentation of the action research which I performed as part of my internship at the Florida Virtual School in the fall of 2013. Education is about student success, both in the classroom and in the future. While educators have long realized the importance of reading success on education, high numbers of students in this country are still not succeeding in reading. In a 2011 study done by the NAEP, it was noted that approximately 68% of grade 8 students and 64% of grade 12 students were reading below the proficient level, and approximately 69% of grade 8 students and 77% of grade 12 students were writing below the proficient level. The goal of education is to ensure not only that students are leaving the classroom with a predetermined knowledge base and the ability to meet preset standards. Education is also about giving students the ability to make their own connections outside of the classroom, or, in other words, teaching students how to learn. As we all know by now, disengaged, inactive students show little success on standardized tests. They often fail to meet school curriculum standards and are involved in a high percentage of disciplinary actions. Engaged students, however, are more successful and display fewer disciplinary actions. By giving students the ability to personalize their learning, educators can harness an adolescent's desire for autonomy and assist students in making better choices to further their education. Well, that's the idea anyway. In her book, Read-A-Side, How Schools Are Killing Reading and What You Can Do About It, author Kelly Gallagher asserts that in order to foster success in reading, educators must validate the literacy choices made by their students and not put excessive pressure on them to read certain material. Additionally, they should not further damage reading enjoyment by merely teaching to a given test. Gallagher maintains that choice, free time to read during the school day, and support from teachers are essential to student reading success. My action research project centers around this choice, a student's choice to choose their reading materials. While some researchers point to the benefits of having a collective student knowledge base, for example, using the whole class novel approach to teaching a given unit, student choice in reading material has been known to create a more enjoyable experience for students and help them engage more fully in the classroom. While there have been studies done on the effect of student engagement on student success, few studies have been done to see if student choice in reading material actually helps students to be more successful in the classroom overall. This question became the basis of my action research project. Taking this into account, the goal of my action research was to determine the effect of student choice in reading material on the students' overall success in a language arts classroom. The big question was, does student choice positively impact student performance? The implications of this research would have real practical applications related to how English courses are taught and what allowances are made for student reading choice. While there are a number of school districts in this country that are currently making room for student choice in reading material, none has performed a thorough data analysis of the effect that student reading choice has on student success. They also have not tailored their curriculum to reflect any subsequent findings, since they haven't done the research. The primary research question that directed my study was, will students who choose their reading materials for language arts classes be more successful than those who are assigned specific reading material for the same class? This question was at the heart of all of the research done on this project. This was the guiding question, and although it was broken down into multiple data points, this was the question that we wanted to answer with this study. When determining data points that could be measured during the course of this study, several secondary research questions that guided the data collection and analysis were formed. Will students who read material that they have chosen read for longer periods of time? Will students who read material that they have chosen read more books? Will students who read material that they have chosen participate more often in classroom discussions? Because this was a virtual school, the frequency of classroom participation was measured by the number of times that students either showed up in a virtual discussion room, the number of times that they posted to a classroom bulletin board, or similar activity. Next, will students who read material that they have chosen have higher quality classroom participation? Again, we assessed the classroom frequency of posts and the student participation within the virtual class setting on the Blackboard sites. And for the purpose of this study, the quality of classroom participation was rated on a scale of 1 to 5. Last, will students who read material that they have chosen score higher on quizzes or end-of-unit tests? For the purpose of this study, the end-of-unit test was the end of the section written piece that each student was required to submit. There have been a lot of research studies that delved into the impact of student choice in reading materials and how it affected overall student engagement in classroom activities. We've also seen a lot of studies on how student engagement affects student performance. During my research, however, I found very little research that specifically centered on the correlation between student choice in reading materials and overall student success. By incorporating and building on current research, my action research was designed to analyze student reading choice and its overall effect on individual student success. In my initial literature review, I found a lot of data that suggested 3 very specific points. First, that students need to be successful in reading, now more than ever. It affects every aspect of their lives. Second, student engagement increases student success. And third, student choice increases student engagement. Let's tackle these point by point. First, let's discuss the need for reading success. According to the International Reading Association, young people who come of age in the new millennium will invariably read and write more often and be exposed to more reading and writing platforms than any other group in history. In order to excel in life, they will need advanced levels of literacy that is transferable between different platforms. The need for literacy in our changing world is critical for student success. During an analysis of the No Child Left Behind Act, ACT and Key note the following about adolescent reading and writing success. Even for students who achieve early reading and writing success, the literacy demands of middle and high school can pose substantial challenges. Older students must be able to comprehend more complex vocabulary texts, determine the meaning of obscure, unfamiliar words, use higher-order thinking to analyze a wide variety of literacy and expository texts, and develop skills for expressing their ideas. Bianca Rosa notes that the secondary years provide a last chance for many students to build sufficient reading skills to succeed in their demanding courses. And coupled with the observations of Acting Key, the obvious imperative of student reading success for overall student success is evident. Educators do not have control over their students' reading level and past successes, but they can make efforts to engage them in order to develop the quality reading skills that will make them more successful students overall. Statistics show that student reading success can show an impact on their grades in other classes as well. Nearly 80% of students who were failing reading language arts in 6th to 8th grade reported receiving a failing grade in one or more other classes as well. Additionally, reading success in middle and high school are strong indicators of college preparedness. According to a study of students entering grade 6, 65% report a concern for their ability to meet the higher literacy demands of middle school. While student preparation from an early age can be a strong indicator of success, middle and high school teachers can still engage these students, and they can still make sure that these adolescents are doing their best work by helping them make strides towards improving their reading. Now let's move on to the need for engagement in adolescent students for success. Remember, engagement equals success. Teachers who focus on skills while failing to address student engagement will generally not realize any improvements. The disengaged student, whether they're reacting with a violent behavioral outburst or just withdrawing from the class, they will never reach their full potential. Adolescents need to be stimulated in the classroom in order to fully engage. In Gettinger's article on best practices in increasing academic learning time, the author notes that even in classrooms where students have an equal opportunity to learn, disparities exist among students in their individual levels of engagement. These disparities in engagement levels will oftentimes make the difference between students who are learning at a high level and those who are lagging behind. While middle and high school students are beginning to develop more adult abilities and can sometimes be motivated by external circumstances and factors, most of these students still require that there be a great deal of intrinsic interest in the class materials that they are reading in order to connect, engage, and employ in higher order thinking. Reading quality work and reading it often is an imperative part of student experience. Simply put, students need enormous quantities of successful reading to become independent, proficient readers. By successful reading, I mean reading experiences in which all students are performing with a high level of accuracy. Everybody in the class is performing with accuracy, fluency, and comprehension. That is from an article by Allington. Student interest and reading frequency go hand in hand with student engagement to create a strong foundation for student success. Student engagement also goes hand in hand with student disciplinary action. Research has shown that students who are engaged in the classroom at a higher level have lower instances of disciplinary action, and in the event disciplinary action does take place, it's usually at a lower level. Usually these instances are much less severe. Having done my action research in a virtual school, I didn't have any kind of encounters with disciplinary actions. However, in a traditional classroom, this does pose an issue. Multicultural classrooms, special education classrooms, and standard track classrooms all show fewer instances of discipline in classrooms where the students reported feeling engaged more often. In these studies, the higher the rate of student engagement, the lower the number of discipline issues. Not only are engaged students less involved in these kinds of issues, they're more successful students. In a study of over 100 students in a high school classroom, 75% of students who scored in the advanced level of the high school's language arts assessments reported feeling engaged in the classroom more than 80% of the time. Student engagement in activities inside of the classroom can be completely negated if a teacher is pressured to teach to the test, or to the text, so to speak. Active learning and participation rates fall drastically when, as Gallagher asserts in Read-A-Side, a curriculum steeped in multiple choice test preparation drives shallow teaching and learning. The quickest way to reduce student engagement and see a decline in student success, according to Gallagher, is to teach the test. Rather than lifting up struggling readers and emphasis on these kinds of tests, ensure that struggling readers will continue to struggle. One manner in which student engagement has been measurable is in the choice versus assignment argument. This moves us on to the third point, the impact of student choice on student engagement. Garrett addresses the lack of research on student reading choice by saying that although research on the academic effects of choice has been limited, some studies have shown that giving students modest options can enhance educational results. Opinion and tradition tend to lean towards the use of the whole class novel in English language arts classes. The creation of lesson plans around a set of literature that has been proven relevant to the unit and the use of quote-unquote safe activities related to these items. The proven need for student engagement, however, seems to call for a different approach. Students who are given an opportunity to choose their own text tend to be less resistant to completing their work and more apt to be successful. Student choice in reading material creates an opportunity for the teacher to let go of a small area of the classroom in order to see results in multiple facets of educational experience. In a New York Times article, a teacher who has created her entire curriculum around the entire idea of student choice was profiled. In this article, a Harvard University professor played devil's advocate and made the case for either the method of student choice or the single body of literary material. In it, this Harvard University professor said, "Some literacy specialists also say that instilling a habit is as important as creating a shared canon. If what we're trying to get to is everybody has read Ethan Frome and Henry James and Shakespeare and the like, then the challenge for the teacher is how do you make the stuff accessible and interesting enough so the kids will stick with it." Her name was Catherine E. Snow, a professor at Harvard University Graduate School of Education. She also said that if the goal is how do you make kids lifelong readers, then it seems that there is a lot to be said for the choice approach. Adults, as good readers, we don't all read the same thing, and we revel in our idiosyncrasies as adult readers, so kids should have some of the same freedom. This is what this Harvard University professor said. Whether the goal is to foster a lifelong knowledge or a collective knowledge base, teachers need to be aware of the impact of choice on their students. Studying student choice in reading versus teaching selections identified by the teacher will allow educators to see both qualitative and quantitative data that assesses relative student success. These 3 points were what my research was based on. It is obvious that students need to be engaged in order to be successful, and it's obvious that student choice increases student engagement. But does student reading choice measurably impact student success? That all-important student reading success that kids need today in order to be successful in their other subjects. That is what my action research was centered around.
Choice equals engagement. Engagement equals success. Does this mean that choice will equal success? Let's find out.
My action research was performed at the Florida Virtual School and was done entirely through virtual interaction. My students were 9th and 10th grade students in an English language arts class. Some of them were repeating the 9th grade class, so they were 10th grade students but in a 9th grade class. The research that I had initially proposed required a physical classroom of students, so alterations to my initial plans had to be made in order to get the results that were measurable in this kind of a setting. For the purpose of this study, I analyzed the effect of student choice of reading material on student effectiveness. In order to complete the action research, I observed and analyzed the effect of individual student success when they were encouraged to choose their own reading material to connect to a specific final classroom activity. Each of the 2 groups of my students were in an on-level grade 9 English class at the Florida Virtual School. The 2 classes were studying the same curriculum. There were about 150 students in the class, of which I had 2 groups of 25 students. Because these are a student-led class, I did not have any control over when students completed their work, in what time frame they completed their work, but I did request that they complete all of the projects in this section of the class by the time I was finished with my student teaching, or internship tutoring, as you would call it. My two groups of 25 students were dubbed Group A and Group B. Group A was taught to do their classroom activities for these particular units using a predetermined set of novels, poetry, and short stories chosen in advance to correspond with each of the two units. This was the standard way that Florida Virtual Learning School had their class set up. So this was very much the control group. Group B was encouraged to select their own reading material for this course and the related activities within this unit. Students in both groups were given detailed ideas of what the activities were going to be, and they were given sufficient time to select reading material, and everything else pretty much remained the same aside from their actual the material that they were reading.
In order to determine whether student choice affected the overall student success, a number of different data collection mechanisms were used. First, student questionnaires were handed out on both the first and last days that I was working with these students. This included questions about student reading habits, student engagement in the classroom, student success in the past, their expectations for this class, and what types of reading they did both in and out of the classroom. Second, I passed out reading logs to them via email. These logs highlighted the quantity of minutes and the number of items read, number of books read. The participation log that was handed out, or not handed out, the participation log that I kept detailed both the quality and the quantity of participation in the classroom. The student quantity obviously was collected based on the number of times the students interacted with the classroom. The quality portion was recorded for each time the student participated in the classroom. I rated their participation on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being a just basic check-in and 5 being a high quality detailed post or contribution to the classroom. One of the major pieces of data that was collected was the written piece at the end of the unit that the students were required to submit. The grade that they received on that was a major portion of whether the student was deemed to be more or less successful based on their student either assignment of reading or student reading choice. Lastly, I requested the students submit testimonials. Now this was either a video or written piece sent in to me by the students to discuss whether they enjoyed the student choice of reading, the level of engagement, if they had assigned reading, and similar things like that. Upon completion of this research project, I analyzed all of the data collection items. The student questionnaires I analyzed for whether the students maintained their current level, regressed, or increased their reading amount and their classroom enjoyment. The reading logs, I recorded the amount that the students were reading and compared them with the students in the alternate group. The participation log, again, I compared with the alternate group. With the participation, I noted which group was participating more often versus the group that was participating with a higher quality. The written piece at the end of the unit was graded in accordance with the Florida Virtual Learning School rubric that each of the students was given at the beginning of the unit. The classroom teacher, Ms. Ratledge, assisted me in grading these pieces. This was the largest piece of data that went into assessing which of the student groups performed at a higher level and coming up with the findings of this project. The student testimonials were a portion of the project that I wanted to have for my own personal records, because when students show engagement, the research shows us, these students will tend to be more successful in the future if they feel more engaged in the classroom. And I wanted to get a feel for how the students felt about this project. There were a number of findings in this research project that were notable. First, I found that students in the choice group read more often. They recorded more numbers of minutes and more books read. After speaking with the students, I found that several of them were looking for a good book to apply to their final piece, and so they were trying on different books to make sure that they got the right one for their topic. Students in the choice group also engaged more in the classroom discussion, both in quality and in quantity. The students in the choice group more often ranked at a level 5 in the quality of their participation, and they also checked in to interact with their classmates more often. Students in both groups performed equally as well on the end of unit assessment. Both students in the control group and students in the choice group performed at equal levels that were consistent with levels that they had previously performed on other assignments. The choice group did not seem to show an improvement on their performance, and I believe that it would show over time a more accurate picture of whether student choice affects. I think that studying it over a 6 to 8 week period is probably not enough time to have assessed it accurately. One notable finding was, the most notable in my opinion, was that the students in the choice group reported more engagement. They reported to enjoy their studies more, they reported to enjoy their reading more, and to enjoy their classroom interactions more. Showing in earlier research that student engagement is an indicator of future student success, I found this to be an interesting finding. All in all, I found this to be a very interesting action research project. Although there was not a stark difference in the two groups on the final project, I did notice increased engagement quite a bit in Group B from Group A. I really do think, as I noted before, that more time would be needed for this project to really show out results. Perhaps in a face-to-face classroom, the limitations wouldn't be as much. In this virtual learning school, I was not able to see my students. The students did not all participate at the same time. There was a lot of limitation in this study that in the initial proposal would have been overcome in a face-to-face classroom, and so I would really like to see something like this done, a study like this done in a traditional classroom. I must say I was surprised by the end results. I thought that the student choice group would win out in the end and show a higher performance level than they did, but I guess that's why we do research. As I stated before, if I were to do this study again in the future, or even suggest something to somebody else doing a study like this in the future, I would suggest that 1, this study be done in a traditional classroom. 2, I would suggest that the length of time be extended possibly over the entire course of a school year, but at the very least a full semester. Additionally, I would include more data points of assignments completed. Because the students in the virtual classroom were not all working at the same pace, the number of assignments that I could request them to complete by a certain date was very limited. Therefore, I was not able to gather as much data on their actual academic assignments as I would have liked. The implications of this research have real practical consequences for language arts teachers. Although they were not concretely showing in their assignments that one group prevailed over another in their academic performance, I did notice that the enjoyment of the classroom, the engagement of the students, and the overall mood of the students who were in the choice group was much more palpable from the students who were in the assignment group. And happy students make for happy teachers. Thank you.